Geronimo by Shepherd. You are listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow. I am here in a studio today sporting my best brand new Insanity Orange t-shirt, which I think is awesome and a little bit bright. Oh wow, today is the 2nd of December. That month of the year is finally here. But before I get started with some interesting stories, I've found something on the internet that I really want to share with you, and I really want to ask you listeners something. I want to know, I'm about to share you a story. Is this considered the worst first date ever? A woman shared a story after on social media. I found this. A man took her on a surprise first date. He asked her to wear something black, and he would pick her up to take her to this destination, and he kept it as a surprise, a mystery kind of thing, and she thought this was quite romantic, but this quickly kind of cooled off when he picked her up and drove her to a crematorium, and she realised he had taken her to his nan's funeral. Now, she was sharing this story with her friend on WhatsApp, who decided to share the story on social media, Twitter I think it was, because she was just stunned by it. But throughout this conversation that she shared, she asked this lady why she didn't just up and leave, and her response was, he was holding my hand and crying. I really couldn't just walk out of there. And I really don't know where to go with this. The tweet has been liked and retweeted over 30,000 times, and a lot of people have commented on it. One of them saying, this makes me feel much better about my life, and another saying, okay, maybe my luck with dates hasn't hit this bad yet. I'm totally stunned that somebody would go. I think she found him on Tinder. They matched and they arranged to meet up, and that story ensued. I really want to know, have you had a worse experience than that? I really want to hear some of your worst date stories. I just don't think that can be topped. Just imagine going on a date with somebody and they say, wear something black, I'll take you to a surprise location, and you're taken to a crematorium for your grandmother's funeral. How? Why? When? Why? How? Why? Just... I'm lost for words. I'm surprised that so many people could actually find ways of just. I've got nothing. I'm going to throw on a few tunes. Oh my gosh, I've got some interesting songs lined up this week. I'm really going to mix it up a bit. Stick around to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. It Must Be Love by Madness. Before that, we were listening to... What were we listening to? We were listening to Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin. How could I forget that? And after that, we were listening to Love Shack by the B-52s. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and I'm in a studio right now. You can watch this video live by going to insanityradio.com/video. That's the one. We've got a whole new link now. It's no longer /listen and hit that big shiny watch live button. But you can still do that. You can still, the big live, the big shiny watch live button is still there. But insanityradio.com/video is awesome too. Don't forget, you can also listen and watch live on the Insanity Radio app on the Google Play stores and the iTunes. So last week I had two presenters from Insanity Radio on the show, Georgia and Camilla, and they were absolutely amazing. I love their show. The show's on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was way too early for me. 10 o'clock in the morning, why would anybody come up, get out of bed and crawl down to the station to have a show at 10 o'clock in the morning? But it's a beautiful, beautiful show, jam-packed full of retro music, 80s, 70s, and 70s, just tune in, check it out. I recommend it. They were here last week and we were sharing some interesting facts, and I have another one here. I still have a few left over that I didn't get to use last week, so I'm going to throw one out here right now. Is the fact that you pretty much have an entire iron nail in your body, or at least the components for one. See, Iron, a lot of you will know iron is an important nutrient that the human body needs to help your red blood cells to carry oxygen, which produces energy and so on and so forth. And on average, there is enough iron in our body that if we were to pull it out and melt it down, it could form a 3-inch iron nail. I was quite interested by that, but something that's even more interesting is the fact that Netflix, back on Netflix, every single show I do recently, I've found a way of implementing Netflix into the conversation. I don't know why, it's just become a thing for me recently. In the way of retro and old school kind of conversations, Netflix has announced plans to remake animated versions of Roald Dahl classics, including Matilda, the BFG, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, they're describing it as a new slate of original animated event series. It's definitely not the first time the Roald Dahl books have been adapted for the screen, but Netflix series could... they're releasing it in the form of a series, so it could mean that some books are short episodes while others could be turned into entire series. And the titles that are included in this deal so far are Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, the BFG, the Twits, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, George's Marvellous Medicine, and Boy, Tales of Childhood. At the moment, though, I have noticed some titles missing from that list include The Witches, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and James and the Giant Peach. But yeah, production is set to begin on the animated series in 2019 because apparently all these live-action Disney remakes are not enough. We need to bring back all the classics, and Roald Dahl is definitely an amazing collection. Yeah, I'm going to throw on a few more tunes. If you want to make a song request, if you want to request a shout out, if you want to let me know how you're doing, tweet into the studio at Insanity Radio or email studio@insanityradio.com. I'm going to throw on a few more tunes. I'm going to go a little bit more mellow now. I don't want to keep up with this energetic. I want something chill, calm. Actually, on this list, I'm going to play a song that I've only just uploaded to the system recently. It's a song that I heard on another radio station a little while back, and I don't know why, I quite liked it. So I hope you do too. Stick around to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. We're gone. I think I'll just stay here and drink by Merle Haggard. Before that, we were listening to If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next by Manic Street Preachers, and King of the Road by Randy Travis. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM, just in case you didn't already know. And I am White Shadow, and I'm still sporting my Insanity Orange t-shirt. I'm so proud of this. Now, yeah, as I said earlier on, last week, I had Georgia and Camille in the studio, two presenters whose show is on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. Check it out. And we were sharing some fun facts. And I found a fact that I don't know if it's quite as fun as some of the others, but it's definitely interesting. The Atacama Desert in Chile, located on the western edge of South America, may also be the oldest desert on the planet. It's the driest, and amazingly, there are some weather stations out there that have never ever reported rain, and at certain altitudes the soil is so dry and devoid of any kind of life, even microorganisms, that it's comparable to the soil on Mars, to the extent that even NASA has sent researchers to the desert to test instruments that will be used on Mars missions. That was something that I found quite fascinating. Speaking of fascinating, a little while back I was talking to somebody about cars and how much they're changing and how much the technology is kind of just improving over the years. Cars are becoming more secure, more advanced, more so many things, and we started talking about some of the old features that have started disappearing from cars over the years, but there are lots of things that people know that cars have changing, but they've forgotten so many things that were a thing that are no longer a thing. And I've got a list of those things that I'm going to be sharing with you right about now. And the first thing on my list, which is probably recent enough for a lot of you to remember, it's only about 4 years ago when the paper tax discs were abolished and replaced with an electronic tax system after 93 years of paper versions. And it's caused a lot of headaches for drivers who have kind of either forgotten or struggled to figure out how to get the new tax disc. But it hasn't done many favours for the government either, because there was a report last year showing a huge rise in the number of untaxed vehicles on the road, and it's costing the Treasury an estimated £107 million a year. But another thing that has disappeared from the high streets is 4-star petrol. 4-star petrol was banned from the forecourts in January 2000, with cars that previously ran on the fuel converted to take unleaded instead. All petrol engine cars produced from 1992 were built to run on unleaded petrol in preparation for the 4-star pumps to be removed. And I still remember... I'm pretty sure I remember my dad driving into the forecourts and grabbing 4-star petrol way back then. I'd love to find out more about what was different about 4-star petrol. I haven't dug that deep into it, but I'm really curious about why 4-star petrol was written off. I'm curious. If you know, please do tweet me into the studio at Insanity Radio. Another thing that has disappeared, which most people probably would have realised already, people most probably do know, is the road maps. Because most people nowadays get to from A to B with the help of a sat-nav or a smartphone, but the paper maps, even though they're still printed and sold, the sales have declined way more than what some people actually expected. Another thing that some people probably didn't even know existed at any point, which is interesting, the manual choke. I definitely remember my dad having cars that relied on using a manual choke to get the car started in the mornings, but with the introduction of fuel injection systems, the manual choke started disappearing from the market in the early 90s. Steering wheel locks are another thing that have definitely, to some extent, disappeared. To some extent, there are people starting... The steering wheel lock was a sort of a long metal device that people would attach to the steering wheel of the car to stop people from being able to steal the car. With the introduction, that started being phased out with the new modern security systems, and but recently we've started using a lot of keyless cars, and people are worried sometimes. I almost said paranoid then, but I don't think paranoid is the word. I think worried is the word. They've started buying the steering... Basically, the steering wheel locks are coming back into play at the moment because people are so cautious about keyless cars and the keyless ignitions that they're wanting to fall back. So to fall back to something that's just as reliable, or even more reliable. So for the first time in the past 70 years, perhaps, I feel like my granddad is up to date with something. He's the only person I've ever met in my entire life who ever used a steering wheel lock, and as far as I know, pretty much still does to this very day, or would if he was still driving. I'm not sure. I've got to ask him now if he still uses that steering wheel lock. I want to know if it's still around. I miss that thing. But I'm going to take a break there and throw on a few more tunes because I'm droning now. I'm going to take things up a notch, so a bit more tempo for you all. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Stick around to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. Shotgun by George Ezra. Before that, we were listening to Burning Down a House by Talking Heads and It's a Rockin' World by Joe Strummer. It's a song I haven't played for a long time. I feel like the last time I played it might have been during a 24-hour radio marathon back in April, but I'm struggling to remember. I might have played it once since then. It's a fun song. I like it. It's been around for a long time and it's got quite a hyped buzz to it. I like it. It's good. And Shotgun by George Ezra, of course, is a song that people are saying has been played and played and played again and again and again way too often to the point where it's lost its buzz. But listening to that again right now, I don't think it has. I think it's still got it. I don't think we could ever get bored of hearing it. It's just the tempo, the pace, the beat, the rhythm, everything about it is just flawless. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow. And interesting story I was reading about the other day. On Sunday last week, Sunday morning, one of the world's last remaining Sumatran rhinos walked into a pit trap on the island of Borneo. But the trap wasn't set by poachers, it was set by an international coalition of conservation organisations called the Sumatran Rhino Rescue, which was intent on saving the Sumatran rhino from extinction. There are less than 80 of these rhinos left in the world now, and the hope is that the female they've caught and named Pahu will provide some desperately needed genetic diversity to the breeding population of rhinos already in captivity elsewhere in Indonesia. Transporting a large wild animal like that is a massive process, and it must be quite delicate too, because I mean, it's got to be this in particular rhino was caught in a remote mining concession in the middle of a lowland rainforest, and that just makes the mission seem even more impressive. For starters, Pahu was given a sedative before being guided into a crate which was secured inside a truck, and then veterinarians from Indonesia, Malaysia and Australia worked together to ensure her safety and comfort all along the way. At the same time, a local mining company sent a bulldozer to travel with them in a team in order to clear debris from the roads that had washed out due to heavy rains, and a police escort ensured that the convoy wasn't bogged down by curious onlookers and other distractions. And all in all, the 93-mile drive from West Kutai to the nearest rehabilitation centre in Kilian was completed just as the sun was coming up on the Tuesday morning, so that's sort of a 3-day mission going on there. It was reported that Pahu was happy, eating and sleeping, and believe it or not, Indonesia WWF and its team of local NGOs have been trying to capture Pahu since April of this year. So that's sort of 8 months of waiting for Pahu to stroll into this pit trap they'd had set up. But now a different kind of waiting game has begun for them, because we know that Pahu is a female. It's impossible to say, though, whether she's well enough to actually... Well, we don't know if she's old enough to reproductively mature. We don't know whether she might have already become infertile, because while I was digging a little bit deeper into this and some of the concerns they had, Sumatran rhinos apparently get uterine tumours if they don't breed. This is one of the reasons why conservationists are so eager to capture the fragmented populations, as they call it, that remain, and bring them into proximity with each other, because on Sumatra, as an example, the last 75 or so wild animals there are thought to be spread out among 10 different subpopulations. On Borneo, where Pahu was captured, there may be fewer than 10 of those rhinos left in that area, so chances of them meeting for themselves are pretty slim. On the similar topic, I noticed I was reading about something else a while back, and another interesting fact that I'd sketched down before I throw on some more tunes. Apparently, we walk on an Earth that has seen the extinction of 99% of all the species who have ever lived on it. Scientists fear that we're in the midst of a mass extinction, but data is kind of inconclusive, and it's a long process and one we don't have all the past data for. But I mean, to some extent, I feel like we need to be giving ourselves a slight round of applause to some extent, because we're apparently the 1% of the species in the history of the whole of existence that aren't extinct yet. On that note, I'm going to throw on a few more tunes. I have one heck of a mix coming up. Stick around to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. Ain't No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the Elephant. Before that, we were listening to Sweet Dreams Are Made of This by the Eurythmics and Footloose by Kenny Loggins, another one of my old school classics. But speaking of old school classics, Ain't No Rest for the Wicked is a song. The first time I ever heard that song was in the video intro to a game called Borderlands, which some of you may know, some of you may not. It was definitely one of my favourite games for years and years and years, and it was a very successful one too. They ended up releasing Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel, among other series, and there's a big will they won't they still going on in the background at the moment as to whether there'll be an official Borderlands 3 or not. The game creators were saying they don't even know what Borderlands 3 would be yet, but I don't know. I think they've got ideas. I think they've got plans. I've got my fingers crossed. There's no way Borderlands can end the way it has. There's got to be a third, and I feel like that third, Borderlands 3, would be the last as well, because I think there's only so far you can go with the theme. But it's an amazing one. It's an amazing one. If you haven't played it before, I recommend you play it. If you're not a fan of games, become a fan of games just to play Borderlands, or maybe if you want something a little less shooty, go for something like Farming Simulator 19, which was released on the 20th of November this year. Farming Simulator is a game that it's got me reeled in already. I'm absolutely loving it. I started off watching quite a few videos of it on YouTube and Twitch TV, the social gaming network. And I was debating as to whether I wanted to buy it or not. I weren't sure how different it was going to be to the previous installments, Farming Simulator 17. But I was watching, and it has changed so many things. There are so many. There's a couple of new crops, including oats. There's new animals, including horses and dogs. And the horses are an interesting thing because the trailers were making out, and some of the things I was hearing and reading were saying that the horses are just there as an interesting and fun novel mode of transportation. But they are more than that, because you can buy yourself a horse ranch and you can train these horses. If you ride them for a few minutes every day, their fitness level increases, their value increases, you can sell them for a profit, which is quite an interesting change for the usual farming simulator style of just sitting in a tractor and ploughing through crops. But instead of buying individual fields, you buy plots of land. They've introduced lime to give the soil some nutrients after the farm's been used time and time again. And the multiplayer includes multiple farms on one map with permissions. That's something that I absolutely loved. Something that people had a problem with in the past installments of Farming Simulator was that when you're playing in multiplayer, when you join somebody else's game, you're pretty much just helping them on the farm and gaining nothing for yourself except a bit of fun for that time. But Farming Simulator 19 have done it entirely differently. If you join a multiplayer map, you've got the choice of joining somebody else's farm on that map, or starting your own farm company, having your own money, buying your own plots of land and doing your own thing, or helping them with theirs. You can set permissions to lend each other equipment and to work on each other's farms, whether you've got your own farm to focus on or not. And the missions have improved as well. I could go on about this all day. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the missions, because you can hire workers to help with the missions on the AI farms now, and you can have other friends and other people that are playing help you with the missions too, which is a far cry from what we had before. And because last year the missions were timed, you had a set amount of time to finish the field, but this time you do not. They're free to do at your own leisure. You can take on the job and finish doing your field before you rock over there to start working on that one. It's just fascinating. It's a major up. I feel like I've been talking way too much. I feel like I've been boring you already, so I'm just I apologise if you're not into games and you're definitely not interested in Farming Simulator or Borderlands. I feel like I was talking about that way too long. I went a bit rogue with that one, so I'm going to throw on a few more tunes, and I'll be back soon. Enjoy.
Into the streets, we're coming out.
That's The River by Groove Armada, still one of the smoothest, most calming, relaxing tunes ever to exist on the face of mankind. Before that, we were listening to Save the World by Swedish House Mafia and It Can't Rain All the Time by Jane Silbury, which I think is an underrated song. I just think it's underrated. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow. Today is Sunday, the 2nd of December 2018, which means there are only 29 days until the end of the year and only 23 days left until Christmas. Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Ho, ho, ho! I really wasn't going to do that, and then I thought, I need to do it. It has to be done. Now, this December, I cannot put enough emphasis onto how exciting this actually is. This December, this year, this December has 5 Mondays, 5 Saturdays and 5 Sundays. Now, the last time this happened was in the year 1195. Having 5 Mondays, Saturdays and Sundays in December is something that only happens once every 823 years. That makes this one of the most unique calendar-based Christmases, Decembers, that we're going to witness in our lifetime. I don't know what to do with this information. I really don't, but I thought it was amazing and I wanted to share it with you. On this day in 1927, the first Model A Ford was sold for $385 American. On this day in 1933, Fred Astaire's first film, Dancing Lady, was released. In 1939, the British Imperial Airways and British Airways merged to form British Overseas Airways Corporation. And breathe. In 1942, the world's first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction occurred in Chicago Pile 1, the world's first nuclear reactor at the University of Chicago in 1952 on this day. I've just completely lost what I was even talking about then for a moment. We saw the first televised human birth on KOA TV in Colorado in 1952 on this day, the first televised human birth. In 1960, the paleoanthropologist Louis Leakey discovered the first 1.4 million year old Homo erectus in Tanzania. In 1964, I had to add this one in here, in 1964 on this day, Ringo Starr's tonsils were removed. Yes, in 1967, on this day, the first human heart transplants performed in South Africa by Dr. Christian Bernard on his patient Louis Washkansky. I do hope I pronounced that right. 1969, on this day, the Boeing 747 jumbo jet had its first public preview. In 1978, on this day, Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand's song You Don't Bring Me Flowers hit #1. In 1982, on this day, the first permanent artificial heart was successfully implanted in a retired dentist called Barney Clark, who lived for an entire 112 days with the Jarvik 7 heart. 112. I do hope technology's moved on a wee bit since then. In 2013, China launched its first moon rover mission on this day, and in 2014, on this day, a whole 4 years ago, the late Stephen Hawking claimed that the artificial intelligence could be a threat to mankind and spell the end of the human race. And it's definitely not the first time that's been heard, I'm sure. 5 years ago, on this day, the #1 song in the UK was Under Control by Calvin Harris. The #1 song in the UK in December 2nd, 2008, 10 years ago, was The Greatest Day by Take That. 15 years ago, Leave Right Now by Will Young was the #1 in the UK, and in 1998, 20 years ago, Believe by Cher was at the top of the UK charts. And something that interested me was the fact that 25 years ago today, still in the #1 in the UK charts, 25 years ago, back in 1993, on this day, was I'd Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That by Meatloaf, still. So I did a bit of research and I found out that it became Meatloaf's first and only #1 single on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and the UK singles chart. And it was the best selling single of 1993 in the United Kingdom, selling 761,200 copies and staying at #1 for was it 7 weeks, the song earned Meatloaf a Grammy Award for Best Rock Vocal Performance Solo. And the song was 7 minutes and 52 seconds long, and it became the longest song on top of the charts since the Beatles hit Hey Jude. And this was eventually broken when Oasis released their 1997 hit All Around the World, clocking in at 9 minutes and 20 seconds. That's a song and a half. Yeah, what else have we got here? Awareness days. Yes, there are not many. I mean, we need to be aware that Christmas is well on its way. But besides that, today is International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. Tomorrow is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And then on the 8th of December, we have a Bring Your Christmas Tree Home Day. On the 10th of December, Human Rights Day and Animal Rights Day. And of course, on the 14th of December is International Official Christmas Jumper Day. I'm guessing that has something to do with wearing Christmas jumpers on the 14th of December. So get yours out of storage because it's going to be well used. If you haven't got one, ask somebody to give you one as an early Christmas present. That could be an interesting idea. I'm going to throw on a few more tunes. I've been getting quite nostalgic, so I'm going to be throwing on some of my favourites once again. Stick around to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. Umbrella. That was Umbrella, I already said it, by the Baseballs. Before that, we were listening to Maggie May by Rod Stewart. If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher. After that, you're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I'm White Shadow, and I'm still forgetting how to breathe before speaking. I'm almost nearly coming towards the end of my show already. But first off, I'm not only going to blow your mind with some fascinating science, astrological stuff, but I'm going to share a few more things that I've noticed missing from cars in the modern age that some people just haven't noticed so much. Yes, now Pluto, not the dog, the planet that isn't a planet, that is a planet but a dwarf planet, and people are still debating about that. Pluto was discovered on February the 18th, 1930. It's the furthest dwarf planet that isn't a planet that is a planet from the Sun, which means it's required to go a much further distance than we're used to on Earth to get around the Sun in a complete cycle. It takes a whopping 248 Earth years to complete one rotation of its own around the Sun, which is theoretically its own year, 248 Earth years. This places Pluto's first birthday since its discovery on Monday, March the 23rd in 2178. Technically, Pluto isn't even 1 year old. Since its first birthday is going to be the year 2178, it's probably a good idea to call in and say we might not make the party. But yeah, okay, moving on to the whole car thing again, because I've still got a few here I want to share. First off, antennas, because cars used to have enormous antennas, receivers, usually sitting on top of the roof more often than not, and they were very easily snappable features that became a bane in so many people's side. But since receivers have improved and more cars feature DAB radio, these lovely, easily snappable antennas have pretty much become a thing of the past. And I do actually remember, I was talking to my friend about old CRT televisions only yesterday, and the fact that if you didn't have a strong signal, if you had an internal aerial small TV, you could just plug a wire coat hanger into the back of the RF socket of the TV, and you could usually pick up a pretty decent signal, especially when it was a smaller black and white televisions, because they didn't need so much information sent to them. They didn't need such a strong signal, so you could usually get a pretty clear picture, which is more than you can say for most modern technology, because if there's a blip with modern technology, you lose the entire TV station, the entire channel, usually your entire all your channels until they come out and fix it. But back in them there good old days when I was a wee whippersnapper, if there was a glitch, if there was a bad weather or anything like that, you could usually just get a way of wiggling your aerial about a bit, or just tuning the dial to fine-tune the TV a little bit to find the perfect frequency for it. But those days are gone. We're now at the mercy of modern, digital, improved technology. Another thing that has disappeared from cars in recent years is ashtrays and cigarettes lighters, which is a bit of a given. Usually They're just sort of plugged in with blank holes and caps on the top of them now. Coin trays is something that's disappearing from cars very rapidly because we're moving to another modern digital age where we're using digital currency, banking, online stuff, that kind of thing. We don't usually need coins to be carried around with us. Aren't really many coin trays anymore. They used to have a coin holder, almost a dedicated tray that you could pull out that had its own slots to put different types of coins into. But now that just doesn't happen anymore. People are forced to be using their cup cradles. Wind-up windows is something I remember very, very, very well. It was only about the year 2000 when electric-powered windows started becoming more mainstream, but they were still a luxury 18 years ago. Because you know what, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to save some of these for next week. I'm going to call it a day. I'm out of here. Don't forget to stick around because we're going to have the Insanity Radio Chart show coming up at 2 o'clock. Thank you for listening. I will be back next week. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get ready to rumble. Let's get ready, let's get ready, let's get ready to rumble. Watch us wreck the mic, watch us wreck the mic, watch us wreck the mic. Psych.